They looked like ants. All the people down below, they looked like ants. Why? Because I was about 300 feet in the air, swinging on a plank board, like the kind you tie to an apple tree branch with rope. And how did I get up there? Well, that's why journalism is the greatest career in the whole world. You see, it was 1910 and I was 25 years old, and I was literally in my first month on the job at the Kansas City Post. The Army was demonstrating a man-carrying kite in Kansas City, and I went out to cover it. As soon as I saw my chance, I raised my hand, ran over to the officers and said, "I'll try it." Well, after they stared at me for what seemed like forever, with a look of total confusion on their faces, they sent me up for a ride I will never forget. It was a big, boxy thing, similar to what you'd call a paraglider today, but indeed, it was a kite, and it did send me several hundred feet into the air. I was smart enough to borrow a piece of elastic to tie my skirt down around my ankle so it wouldn't fly up, and I borrowed a stocking cap to keep my hair from getting all blown about. A picture of me and the kite appeared on the front page of the newspaper the next day. And because I lived to be 100 years old, the answer is yes, I did make it down safely that day in 1910. My name is Mary Paxton Keeley, and I am so tickled that you came out to visit me today. I grew up in Independence, and one of my best friends was a girl named Bess. Now, some of you may be able to put two and two together, but we'll come back to that later. After stops in Chicago and Virginia for college, I heard that the University of Missouri was opening the world's first school of journalism. Now, I thought this was kind of funny because I didn't understand why there weren't already schools for journalism. Anyway, I was happy to be returning to Missouri, and on the first day that Walter Williams opened the front door, he found me sitting on the steps, waiting. I would be the first female graduate of the world's first school of journalism. During my years at the J School in 1909 and 1910, I fell in love with one of my professors, and he with me. Oops. It was a little awkward, but we were able to date discreetly, and we honestly thought that we would marry. But it was not meant to be. Between his responsibilities to two sisters and a mother who depended on him and a little thing called World War I, we would never marry. But we did correspond as the best of friends for the next 40 years of our lives. After I graduated on a Tuesday, I was lucky enough to have a job at the Kansas City Post the following Monday. Now, I was a bit of a curiosity there. You see, it was so unusual to see a woman in the newsroom that people would line up along the glass just to get a glimpse of me. When World War I broke out, I made up my mind to be of help. By this time, I was engaged to Edmund Burke Keeley from Virginia, but I decided to spend the next year and a half doing canteen work in France. One time, I had the opportunity to see President Woodrow Wilson review the troops. When I came back to the United States in 1918, Edmund and I were married. Sadly, his health began to fail, and I lost my husband 10 years later in 1928. I never did remarry. After I picked up a master's degree, I came back to Columbia to teach journalism at Christian College. I also taught creative writing, and I wrote and published several plays. During my time in Columbia, one of my favorite things to do was to ride my bicycle all over town. I understand that's something you like to do today, and you even have bike lanes. I wish I had those. Anyway, I guess I was famous for being seen flying around town on my bicycle. And when I could no longer bicycle, I could be seen working my way around town with a tall walking stick that was candy cane striped and had a Donald Duck nightlight on the top. I retired from teaching in 1952, but I continued to write articles for the Kansas City Star. I am very proud to have co-founded the Columbia Arts League in 1959. During the first part of my life, I had everything I wanted. For the next 40 years, I had to struggle. I am very grateful that that was my experience, rather than having a sheltered and privileged life. Remember that childhood friend, Bess, from Independence? Well, she would grow up to marry a fellow named Harry, who would wind up in the White House. It was always such a thrill to get an invitation to visit them there. And you know that professor I fell in love with? His name was Charlie Ross, and he would be Harry's press secretary. So getting to visit Harry and Bess meant getting to visit with an old flame, too. What a strange, small world. Well, thank you so much for coming to visit me today. I hope you'll come back and see me often. Have a wonderful afternoon. Goodbye.